Mexico's history is stained with blood, and surprisingly, guys aren't always the ones pulling the trigger. From cult queens demanding blood to monsters hunting the weak, these women left the entire paralyzed with fear. Where are you watching from? Drop your country below and tell me who we should cover next. If you're hooked on twisted global crime, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated. Trust me, you can miss this nightmare involving the Gonzalez Valenzuela sisters, Delfina and the Roadside. In January 1964, cops hit the sleepy streets of San Francisco del Rincón, Guanajuato. They raided a spot locals gossiped about for years. Plain joint that looked like another roadside dive. Once inside, investigators found a nightmare far worse than anyone ever dared imagine. Piles of bodies were shoved into dirt pits, some just skeletons, others still had faces. That day crushed a kingdom of pain and kicked off Mexico's most twisted criminal expose ever. Meet the Gonzalez Valenzuela sisters, Las Poquianchis. Delfina and Maria didn't exactly scream cold-blooded initially. Neighbors saw them as tough, no-nonsense entrepreneurs owning various properties across Jalisco. Carmen and Louisa, the younger ones, mostly stayed in the shadows. They operated front businesses where guys showed up to booze, gamble, and find some company formal. Publicly, it was just standard business in a town that didn't ask questions. But inside their walls, the sisters ran a trafficking ring so savage it sickened even the most jaded homicide detectives. Most of their targets were young girls, many of them barely out of school, lured from dirt-poor towns by fake ads or rumors of steady work as waitresses or cleaners. Parents let their kids go, praying for a better life. But once those doors locked, escape was impossible. The sisters erased who they were, handing out fake names, impossible rules, and debts that never rules. There was a dark pecking order. Delfina, the oldest, ran the numbers and called for blood when Maria de Jesus was charming but dangerous, the ticking time bomb who kept everyone in line. Carmen was the low-key recruiter, while little sister Louisa just flitted in and out, losing her grip more every year. They ran this nightmare for over 10 years. Any girl got sick or talked got a beating. Runaways were turned into warnings, beaten so bad the rest of the girls knew better than to even try. No babies allowed. Infants got dumped or dealt with in even darker ways. The whole setup was built to crush spirits. Those sisters loved every bit of the power. They graced palms and kept the cops in their pockets, so nobody'd ask questions. And for a long time, it worked. Business was booming and they were rolling in cash. But by 1963, things started leaking. One girl slipped out and spilled everything. She talked about girls chained to bedposts, shallow graves in the yard, and guys with guns at every door. Cops didn't buy it at first, thinking she was blowing smoke, until people kept vanishing right near the sisters' place. By the time they kicked the doors in early 1964, they figured they'd find a few survivors. Instead, they found a literal boneyard. Rotting remains were everywhere, some still in the clothes they wore when they first walked. Others were just too far gone to ever name. The girls who made it out told stories of a torture machine run like a clockwork operation. This wasn't just heat of the moment stuff, it was stone cold business. Nobody knows exactly how many lives were lost. They tagged them for 90 murders officially, but word on the street says it was over 200. Never the real count. The why. Sure, money talks. The house was a goldmine, and killing off useless workers kept the margins high. But the survivors saw something way more twisted behind those eyes. Delfina tracked every cent like a robot, treating those women like boxes in a warehouse. Maria House, though she was a wild card, acting all erratic and calling herself the mother of the place while handing out death sentences. Carmen actually thought she was doing the girls a favor by giving them a job, a sick lie that fell apart fast. And then there was Louisa, who was already breaking. They lost their damn minds, muttering to God while knee-deep in that mess. Trust me, it wasn't just about the money. Empathy just evaporated. People were turned into products, then into straight-up garbage. Their trial was all the country could talk about. The courtroom was packed with folks dying to see the faces of the women who'd become the new definition of evil. Those sisters mostly just sat there faced, while the survivors stood up and told their horror story. Photos of the burial sites hit every paper in Mexico, making people wonder how this nightmare happened broad daylight. The judge threw the book at them. Delfina and Maria de Jesus Both got 40 years, which was the absolute limit then. Carmen was tagged as an accomplice. Louisa lost her mind and got hauled off to a psych ward. But even their endings had some pretty messed up twists of fate. Delfina, the brains of the operation, died in 1968 when a construction crew dumped a ton of wet cement on her cell. Carmen died of cancer in the joint. Louisa never got her head right and passed away in the asylum. Maria de Jesus did her time, got out in 1998, and just fell off the map. Nowadays, the name Las Poquianchis still haunts Mexico. It's shorthand for dirty deals, cruelty, and preying on the weak. It wasn't just for sisters. It's a dark look at how being poor and having zero power lets you get chewed up by the system. When the feds finally cleared the place out in 1964, one officer supposedly muttered, "You can dig up the bodies, but the air here is stained forever." That feeling still sticks. What those women did serves as a grim reminder that behind the news clips are real people who's less to raise. And the real kicker, you gotta wonder how many others are still trapped in the dark, just waiting for someone to find them. Meet Felicitas Sanchez Aguilan, the monster of Colonia Roma, April 1941. Right in the heart of Mexico City's fancy Colonia Roma, a neighborhood that's usually all about class and style. A quiet apartment on Salamanca Street became the site of a scene so nasty that even veteran cops hesitated to walk. Neighbors had been complaining about a full smell, sweet, chemical, and just totally wrong. When the police finally busted in, they found more than just nursing tools. They found tiny bones at a labor. There were jars filled with weird gunk and the horrific remains of what used to be little babies. This was where Felicitas Sanchez Aguilan, a trusted midwife, ran her death business. To look at her, you'd never guess she was a killer. Born in Veracruz in 1890, she was sharp, ambitious, and a trained pro. Pretty rare for women back then. She moved to the city and set herself up as a nurse and midwife. She was the person you called when you were in trouble. Her patients said she was steady, capable. To the families she worked for, she was the one who brought new life into the world. But that was a front. Felicitas was building a business on blood, not care. She hunted the most defenseless. Babies born into poverty and total despair. Back in the 1930s, Mexico City was growing fast. People were flooding in from the country for work, but mostly they just found misery. Plenty of single moms who couldn't keep their kids ended up going to Felicitas for help. She had answers, temporary care, adoptions, or discreet endings. At first, it seemed like a grim necessary. She'd farm the babies out to families who would pay top dollar for an adoption. She even cooked the books to make everything look legit. But then the business turned pitch black. The babies she could to sell. The sick ones are the ones nobody wanted. They just started to disappear. By 1938, the neighbors noticed a trend. Women would go in pregnant and walk out egged. There were constant deliveries of kerosene and lime, and the smell of burning became a local staple. The cops just ignored all the complaints. Felicitas was a professional nurse in good standing, and the police didn't question people with her status. She was systematic. Investigators later found out she used poison, choking, and even fire to get rid of those infants. Some bodies were hacked up before being burned. The remains were tossed in the trash or buried in dye. By the time the law caught on, they estimated she'd killed at least 40 kids, though some say it's way higher. The bust in April 1941 was almost a total accident. A plumber fixing a drain nearby found tiny bones jamming the pipes. He called the cops, who tracked them at the MASSACRE to her door. Inside, the police found ledgers where she'd listed the babies by their weight, their looks, the price tags. Some names got a check, the others were just crossed out. Cops found jars of human organs and her personal recipes for lethal injections. This wasn't some breakdown. She basically turned her medical training into a cold, calculated business mold. For Felicitas, it all came down to the money. A healthy newborn was a big payday from couples desperate to adopt. The ones she couldn't sell were just baggage. Dead weight she got rid of. Word was she was heartless and totally looked down on those mothers. She didn't see babies. She saw products to be moved. She was a neat freak, like cleaning up could erase what she'd done. Her past was messy, a violent marriage and twins she lost years back. Hard to say if that loss broke her or just showed who she really was. When the cuffs went on, she was spooky quiet. She didn't deny a thing. She just asked for a smoke. News spread fast, and the papers dubbed her the ogress of Colonia Roma. The people expected a massive trial to see how a nurse became a killer, but the public never got that closure. A few weeks in, She swallowed poison and died in her cell. How many babies went through her hands? How many families are living a lie? How did she fly under the radar for that long? Today, people avoid the subject. It's a bitter pill to swallow. She wasn't some street thug. She was a professional everyone trusted, and she used that respect to run a business built on pure cruelty. Standing outside her old spot now, you'd never guess the history. The neighborhood is all trendy and artistic now, but beneath the surface, there's a dark stain that won't wash away. On January 25, 2006, in a quiet neighborhood, police found Ana Maria de los Reyes Afero dead in her home. Someone choked her out with a stethoscope. It was brutal. Witnesses saw a woman, not a guy, sprinting away from the house. They grabbed Juana Barraza minutes later. She looked like any other lady. Hours later, they realized they'd caught a prolific serial killer. The old lady killer didn't look like a monster at all. Grew up dirt poor in Hidalgo, dreaming of being someone powerful. She found her calling in the world of professional wrestling. She wrestled as the Lady of Silence, a masked, powerful fighter. Off camera, she was a quiet mom of 4 that neighbors liked. Most people just saw a regular woman trying to get by, but deep down, she was harboring a rage that was about to explode. She targeted the most helpless, elderly women living by themselves. They opened their doors because she did to seem like a threat. She posed as a nurse or social worker to get past the front door. She didn't get caught by some fancy profiling. It was just luck. That day in 2006, she went for one last victim, but a neighbor spotted her and the cops chased her down. Her bag was full of stolen jewelry and IDs from her past victims. When the feds kicked in her door, the smoking gun was right there. Bloody gear and creepy trophies everywhere. Faced with the heat, Hannah copped to the hits, but kept body blurry. They figure she snatched the lives of 30 to 40 women over a 10-year run. Peeling back, why Hannah snapped was way more twisted than just tallying up the dead. Shrinks found some heavy baggage. Her drunk mother literally auctioned her off to an old creep when she was just a kid. The trauma left her with a permanent chip on her shoulder against any woman who looked like a Tifra. In the interrogation room, Hannah admitted she hunted seniors because they were dead rangers for a mom. Still, everything she did felt cold and calculated. She swiped their cash, but witnesses said she looked totally numb, like she was just playing a role in some sick play. Hustling as a star wrestler by day and a predator by night, she was walking a tightrope between order and tormentor. She wanted respect, but she only knew how to break things. Then the trial gripped the whole countries. In 2008, they pinned 16 murders and 12 robberies on her. Even though the cops knew she'd done way more, they handed her 759 years deniers. Mexican law caps it at 60, but let's be real, she's never walking out of there. Through the whole circus, she stayed cool, even smirking at the cameras when asked about regret and just about regret. That quiet vibe she used in the ring became her whole brand in the real world. Now, Hannah Barza is rotting in a pen outside Mexico City, passing time making trinkets to sell. Her story hits different because she wasn't some monster in the shadows. She was part of the neighborhood. Just a neighbor, a performer, a mom. The old lady killer wrecked the peace for every grandma in Mexico, proving trust is a dangerous thing. It showed how old scars can turn into a public bloodbath if they never get stitched up. Standing on the corner where they cuffed her, the city is still loud and busy, like it forgot. But for the ones who remember, the story hangs heavy, a reminder that evil looks just like us. Behind the headlines is a human wreck shaped by pain and choices that ruined lives forever. Enter Magdalena Solis, the high priestess of blood. May 1963, out in the sticks of Yerba Buena, cops stumbled into a literal horror movie. They were looking for missing locals, just regular folks who'd vanished into thin air. Instead, they found shallow graves, scattered bones, and altars drenched in blood. At the center of the mess was a name the survivors only whispered. Magdalena Solis, the self-made blood queen who turned a poor farm town into a house of mirrors. Magdalena wasn't born with a crown. She was a nobody from Monterrey in the 40s, just another face in the crowd. She worked grunt jobs and, if you check the files, did what she had to on the streets to eat. On the outside, she was unremarkable, just another girl grinding through the dirt in post-war Mexico. But people who met her felt a vibe. This pull that made it impossible to look away. She was hungry, sharp, and knew exactly how to play with people's faith. That's how she flipped the script from an ordinary girl to the country's most feared cult boss. She didn't pick randoms. She hunted the folks in Yerba Buena, a town starving for a win. For years, that place was forgotten and hungry. They were dying for a savior, body and soul. That kind of desperation makes you a sitting duck. It all started when the Hernandez brothers rolled in, claiming they were prophets for the old Aztec gods. They used cheap parlor tricks and lies about gold to keep the locals in their pocket. But when the act started getting thin, they needed a heavy hitter to lock it down. Enter Magdalene. They brought her in as some kind of holy messenger from above. She told everyone she was a goddess reborn, and her intensity totally sold the scam. Within a few weeks, she was to just helping out. She was running the entire show. Once Magdalena took over, things got dark. Symbolic offerings were swapped for animal blood. But she soon wanted more. Witnesses claim she told everyone that only human blood would give them the powers they were after. She started with the doubters. They were dragged out and ended, while the rest of the crew, watch and crew. Magdalena was calling every shot. She swore these acts were necessary to keep the whole community pure. Survivors remember torchlit nights where she'd stand in robes, chugging blood from bowls, while chanting. She had them totally brainwashed. They really believed she was the only one who could save their wives. For months, things spiraled out of control. At least 8 people were taken out in these rituals. Some say it was actually 15. Every death just made her grip on the survivors even tighter. The nightmare might have kept going if it wasn't for 2 outsiders. These teenagers accidentally walked into a ceremony and bolted. The cult tried to hunt them down. One kid was caught and erased. The other escaped and told the cops. When the law arrived, they ran into a wall of bullets from cult members who thought they were defending holy ground. It took days to secure the area. The locals looked like zombies, finally waking up from a long dream. Magdalena and the Hernandez crew were cuffed. The altars were trashed, bodies were dug up, and every twisted detail was put on record. To understand her, you have to look past the gore. It was really about ego, money, and having total control over people. She didn't just want followers. She wanted everyone on their knees, treating her like a god.